Bill Anderson just confirmed what everyone already thought about Linda Davis. The truth hit much harder than the rumors. Their names were heard together in Nashville for decades, like a question that no one dared to ask out loud. He was the quiet man who wrote some of the most tender facts in country music. A man who made a name for himself by being quiet. Another voice spoke after me. It was familiar enough to make me recognize it, but strong enough to stand on its own. They never said what linked them, never denied it, and never forgot about it. The whispers got louder as they went through offices and backstage hallways because neither of them said anything. Anderson gave the rumors time to grow. He trusted silence more than correction, and time more than being told what was going on. People thought they understood, but there was still a gap between assumption and acceptance. The moment is no longer safe for Bill Anderson, who is 88 years old. He is keeping the message safe. What did he confirm about Linda Davis when the silence finally broke? Why did it take so long to say it out loud? Bill Anderson was a young man who learned how powerful a quiet voice could be before he became a country music icon of control. As a child, he was drawn not to praise, but to observation. He was born James William Anderson III in Columbia, South Carolina. He paid close attention. He saw how people spoke when they weren't sure what to say, how feelings calmed down when they weren't being pushed, and how the truth often came out of nowhere. What happened after that would be shaped by that sense. Writing songs came early. Anderson knew about structure, music, and story before he knew about fame. He wrote the song, City Lights, in 1958. It was about longing without being flashy. Nashville paid attention when Ray Price recorded it and made it a hit. Anderson didn't rush into the spotlight when he became famous, even though he became famous very quickly. He kept his mind on the work even though he knew that noise could change what it meant. His own music career went in a similar direction. His singing wasn't too loud. He sang to connect. Still had a big hit on the country charts in 1963, but it didn't lose its emotional control when it went mainstream. It was shown by the song that softness could hold attention just as well as force. Anderson's voice made it sound like each song was written just for one person, not a crowd. Because of that, he got a nickname that stuck with him. Whispering Bill was not made up for business purposes. It was just a thought. His voice was caring instead of insistent. He put more faith in phrasing than noise and pauses than performance. In a business where an artist's presence was often judged by how loud they could be, Anderson did the opposite. He drew people in. His music wasn't the only thing that was restrained. As his career grew, he kept what he shared with the world, and what he kept to himself very separate. Interviews showed appreciation and expertise, but they never revealed secrets. His songs were honest about how he felt. But he purposely didn't talk about his personal life. He didn't say he wasn't interested. He just wouldn't give in to it. This balance became a part of who he was. Fans felt close to him because his song was honest about wanting something, having hope, and not knowing what will happen. But they also knew there were lines he would not cross. Anderson never talked about those limits. He didn't say they were a defense or a rule. They were just there. As the country music got louder, his quiet presence stood out even more. While other people focused on acting and persona, Anderson stayed the same. Being consistent built trust. People believed what he sang because he never lied about his life. His reserve did not show that he did not feel anything. It was a sign of power. That sense of power came from knowing how easily lies could be spread. Anderson's progress happened in front of everyone. But his private thoughts stayed just that, his own. He picked music because it was a safe place for feelings to live. Songs let him say things that didn't need to be explained. There was meaning in the lyrics that didn't need to be defended. People talked about him differently after that decision over time. People looked up to him not only for his catalog, but also for keeping things quiet. Younger artists looked up to him and learned not only how to write, but also how to keep going. People never thought his silence meant he was far away. It was seen as a plan. This trend started early and hasn't changed. Anderson showed that being open didn't mean being exposed by going from city lights to silence, and from a soft voice to a calm presence. It was possible to be gentle with the truth and still feel it fully. Linda Davis came into the story at a time when timing was more important than wanting to do well. She wasn't a finished product when she got to Nashville. She was a new artist still learning how to keep her voice safe without changing what it says. She was raised on old-fashioned country music, so her sound had weight rather than polish. She didn't sing to show off. She sang to be heard. That difference stood out in a city full of artists trying to get more attention and volume. Her voice leaned toward feeling instead of being too loud. Each note had a purpose. People heard strength without force and weakness without falling apart. It was the kind of approach that didn't follow the crowd and relied on patience. Nashville took a while to notice at first. Davis wasn't a star right away when he got there. She showed up with something. In the end, that content led to defining success. Not long after that, she had a #1 hit with Reba McEntire called "Does He Love You?" A performance that was remembered not for its showmanship, but for how well it made people feel. People who paid close attention already knew what the song said. Linda Davis fit in country music because she understood how it made people feel. Her success didn't erase where she came from. It made things clearer. Mentorship has always been important in Nashville, even though it doesn't talk about it very often. People often move up in their careers not only because they are talented but also because someone helped them behind the scenes. Bill Anderson knew a lot about this society. Before Davis came along, he had been helping out younger artists for years, giving them support without taking credit. His method to mentoring was like the way he wrote songs. Present, aware, and not bothersome. Anderson didn't recognize Davis because she needed to be shaped. It was because she had something familiar on her. Her traditional way of singing fit with the values he had upheld throughout his work. She knew how to be calm. She believed in silence. It took her time to get emotional rewards. In a city that often praised speed, those traits really stood out. That shared understanding is what brought them together. Anderson gave people time instead of lessons. That's right. He watched. He helped without saying so. This kind of mentoring didn't just happen. It was there in talks, practice sessions, and moments of recognition that didn't need to be explained. That presence was important to Davis. It told her that her gut feelings were right. Anderson felt like the mentorship was a normal part of his life. He had always thought that singers who respected the roots of country music were important for its future. Davis showed that consistency. Her voice didn't go against what was expected. It made it longer. That fit made their professional partnership stronger. People paid attention, not because something strange was said, but because they could see the link. In Nashville, being seen opens the door to interpretation. When a well-known person spends time with a new artist, people are interested. Businesses keep a close eye on things. Fans whisper their guesses. The fact that nothing is explained becomes its own story. Anderson and Davis didn't immediately address the crowd. They kept working, keeping playing, and keeping up with the music. The guidance stayed the same even though it wasn't defined. That self-control showed the beliefs they both brought to their jobs. Let the work do the talking. Let time make sense of things. What was understood, not what was said, was what made this moment important. The way they connected was shaped by time. Anderson's experience and Davis's rise to power happened at a time when both could benefit from advice. The connection stayed rooted in music instead of speed. The attention stayed, though. In a town where people like to watch, quiet alignment is often noticed. People in Nashville have always been able to read between the lines. Stories start in hallways, studios, and talks that don't end when they should. This is a long time before they become headlines. The business world doesn't wait for replies when something isn't clear. It gives its own. That's how rumors start, not from proof, but from the lack of it. As word spread about Bill Anderson's business relationship with Linda Davis, people in the town started to talk, though not out loud at first. The kind of talk that gets around without names being tied to it. People saw how much they respected each other, the ease with which they worked together, and the care with which Anderson talked about her work. It didn't cross any lines. There were no questions about what it meant. Still, interpretation came anyway. During this time, what did not happen was more important than what did. It has been proven that Bill Anderson and Linda Davis were never romantically involved. At no point did either of them show their relationship as anything other than professional and polite. This was made clear from the start, and was always kept. Even so, understanding doesn't always stop people from being curious. Anderson didn't want to deal with the noise. He didn't say anything to put an end to the rumors. In public or in private, he didn't correct beliefs. Whatever he said was the same thing he had always said. He didn't say anything. He believed in moderation. He didn't stop the work from going on. When people are rewarded for reacting, that choice stood out. The silence made room. Stories grew in that place. The fact that nothing was said became its own fuel. People filled in the blanks with their own ideas instead of facts. Every time they met, worked together, or shared a moment, it added to a story that neither of them had written. Patterns, not proof, are what make Nashville's gossip culture grow. When two artists work together for no reason, people become more interested. Linda Davis was just as calm when she was the center of attention. She said that Anderson was a guide, and someone she looked up to. The way she talked stayed businesslike. It was clear that she was thankful. She didn't make their relationship seem important. In the same way, she didn't move away from it either. The steady balance made things more mysterious for people who were looking for more. It wasn't accusations that made this time hard. It was perseverance. There were rumors because they were never dealt with directly. They didn't float because they were never tied down. Over time, rumors started to feel like old news, even when they weren't backed up. The story had no content. It was kept going by repetition instead of facts. It wasn't dodging that Anderson wouldn't talk about the rumors. It was always the same. He had always thought that private meaning didn't need to be explained to everyone else. His songs told the truth when words couldn't. His life always went by this rule. Some relationships don't need to be defined in order to be real. It's not necessary for defense to be honored for every bond. That stress was in the silence itself. People were more interested in it the longer it stayed. Every question that wasn't answered made people more interested until the lack of denial felt louder than any denial could. It was in that space that silence started to say what words could not. But the facts stayed the same. There was nothing more to confirm than what had already been said, so there was never any proof. They stayed close through music, being teachers to each other, and respecting each other. Everything else wasn't under their control. The rumors became a normal part of life in Nashville over the years. They stopped being important, but never went away. They lived on the edges of conversations, and in the time between shows. Anderson and Davis didn't try to get rid of them. Instead, they let time carry them. When Bill Anderson was 88 years old, something had changed in his voice. It wasn't the volume, but the clarity. The careful control that used to keep him safe now made him feel at ease. It was no longer his job to mask what he said. To say thanks, he spoke. Years of thought had put things in perspective, and that perspective smoothed the edges of things that had not been said before. Anderson kept going out in public even when he was getting older. He walked onto stages and into interviews with the same calmness that had made his career famous. He didn't feel pushed to confess because of his age. It helped him learn to be thankful. His words stopped going around and around quiet. They took a break inside it. He wasn't defensive when he talked about his life in music, as if he didn't need to explain himself anymore. Anderson came back to the same idea a lot. He had always been able to say what he couldn't say through music. Songs let him show how he felt without having to say it out loud. The lyrics gave meaning to how people felt without asking for interpretation. That thought never changed. What changed was his ease in letting other people know the truth without having to fill in every blank. When the same questions came up in interviews, Anderson didn't change or fix the past in a big way. People had questions, and he didn't deny them or give them an answer. Instead, he made it clear what was important. He talked about getting together. He talked about having power. He talked about being thankful. He chose the words he used. He didn't name any shame. He didn't want a relationship. He agreed that it was important without changing what it meant. That difference was important. Anderson let truth exist without a reason when he chose to acknowledge it over explain it. He didn't feel the need to break down beliefs. He just put the message where it belonged. Through the work, the relationships that shaped it, and the people who were there for him at different times in his life. His thoughts showed that something was always the same. Silence had never been a way to hide. It was about taking care. At this point, he was no longer in need of security for the care. Some people knew what he meant before he said it. People who didn't did not need to be clear any longer. Many years of guesswork were put to rest by this calm acceptance. What didn't feel settled before did now. The moment wasn't less powerful because there wasn't a dramatic reveal. It made it stronger. There was no noise in Anderson's confirmation because it didn't need to be. It had the surety of someone who had lived long enough to know which facts don't need to be told. People in the audience saw the change. In his talks, he was friendly instead of wary. His thoughts were more about appreciating things than being far away from them. He talked about the artists who had inspired him and the ones who had helped him, recognizing that this was something that people of all ages could relate to. In this way, he put his relationship with Linda Davis in the context of a larger pattern of mentoring and mutual respect. There was no rewriting. There was no evidence. It turned out to be alignment. His life matched what he said. In reflection, the silence that once made people curious seemed like it was done on purpose. It looked out for what was important until it could stand on its own. At age 88, Anderson did not say anything that was meant to surprise. He gave clarity that was meant to calm things down. The story stayed the same. The point of view did. The weight of years began to fall away in that shift. Many people thought it was romance when it was really something calmer and longer lasting. It was important. People in this society are taught to look for hidden motives, so being emotionally close is often seen as a bad sign. It's natural for two artists who trust, respect, and work well together to look for a story beneath the surface. Bill Anderson never changed his mind about that. He just wouldn't change the shape of it. Anderson often said that other artists kept him in touch with his purpose over the years. He talked about how shared talent made him want to keep doing music even more, especially as time went on and the business changed. These acknowledgments were not very important. They would not change and were honest. Clearly, he knew that being creative requires connection, not being alone. Part of that flow was having a mentor. That's how Linda Davis easily fit into that picture. What she said about Anderson in public stayed the same. It was her opinion that he was a gentleman and a guide, someone who helped without expecting anything in return. Her praise didn't look like it was a secret. It showed respect. Still, admiration doesn't always end interest. Some people think that respect must be hidden when it can be seen. What's lost in that assumption is the truth that artists work together. Music brings people together without making them fall in love. It makes you vulnerable without giving you anything. That's where Anderson and Davis worked. Listening, timing, and respect for each other formed their relationship. That connection didn't need to be explained because it was based on purpose instead of story. The people often has trouble telling the difference. When emotional ties aren't labeled, they feel empty. Silence starts to look fishy. But Anderson's work had always shown a different truth. Meaning doesn't need to be explained. Influence doesn't need to be seen. Some connections are there to help the work, not to be the work itself. Anderson talked about artists who helped him remember why he started as he thought about his life. These thoughts were more general than specific. He didn't pick out certain parts to stress. He made relationships seem important, not extra. From that point of view, Davis's appearance made sense. It was consistency, not complexity, that she stood for. Davis's respect for Anderson showed that he understood this. Her words were always based on thanks. She never tried to change how they were relating to each other in public. Through her job, the steadiness of her voice, and her adherence to traditional country values, she showed how much he meant to her. In this way, she continued on what he had started without claiming it as her own. The viewer is asked to do something by this reframe. It makes us think about how we think about closeness. An important bond doesn't always hide a secret. Not all relationships that are quiet hide desire. There are times when what we see is exactly what it seems to be. Two artists whose beliefs, timing, and respect are all the same. The observer's need for surprise often says more about them than the people being studied. Questions that don't have answers draw us in. When things are too clear, we look for meaning. Anderson never gave in to that urge. He was sure that meaning would be clear on its own after some time. When you look back, the story is less about what was kept secret and more about what stuck around. The guidance stayed the same. The artistry kept going. There was always respect. What some people thought was privacy was actually meaning being left alone without being shown. It wasn't a scandal when Bill Anderson finally spoke. He agreed that connection, influence, and gratitude are not based on rumors, but on what has happened over time. It wasn't a secret that he told them. They made clear a truth that had been there all along, but had been hidden by noise. Though she wasn't the main character, Linda Davis was an important part of his story. She helped him grow as an artist and was a guide to him. What people thought was romance for years was never it. It was important. Like the kind that happens when two artists see something familiar in each other and don't want to explain it. Anderson never cleared up the misunderstandings because the people did not own the meaning. It was part of the work, the music, and the quiet respect that held them all together. Bill Anderson didn't have to defend his quiet or explain the past when he was 88 years old. He didn't add anything to the truth, he just let it stand on its own. He did this to tell us that some bonds are not meant to be made public. They are meant to last. Check out this for more sad stories.